Okay, so let's dive into this world of psychedelic therapies.
Yeah.
You've sent in some information about how clinical trials are designed
Right.
for these new treatments.
Uh-huh.
Um, and we're talking about things like using psilocybin,
Okay.
the active ingredient in magic mushrooms,
Yeah.
to treat conditions like depression.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is tricky stuff to study
Yeah, it is.
because we're talking about really powerful subjective experiences,
Right.
not just like how a pill affects some disease.
Exactly.
And we've got a lot of really interesting sources here.
Yeah.
You've sent in FDA guidelines and academic papers and all sorts of things.
Yeah, it looks like one of the biggest challenges that researchers are facing is actually
Yeah.
something that people might already be familiar with.
Well,
The placebo effect.
right.
We all know the idea of like a sugar pill.
Yeah.
Making someone feel better just because they believe it will.
Mm-hmm.
Well, imagine that, but amplified.
Amplified. How so?
Well, you expect psychedelics to create these really intense, even mind-altering experiences.
Okay.
And that expectation alone can sometimes create some of those effects.
Oh, right.
Even if you just got a placebo.
Wow.
Researchers call this functional unblinding.
Okay.
And it really throws a wrench into things.
So if people in a trial can kind of guess whether they got the real psychedelic or the placebo,
Mm-hmm.
how can scientists know if the drug itself is actually working?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes it really hard to tell if what you're observing is
Yeah.
due to the drug or just the power of suggestion.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
But then how do you design a clinical trial that's truly blind
right.
when the experience itself might be so obvious?
Mhm.
You can't exactly mask a psychedelic trip, can you?
Well, researchers are getting creative with their placebo design.
Okay.
Some studies use what are called active placebos.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and these are substances that cause some physical effects
Okay.
similar to the drug.
Like what?
So like an increased heart rate or changes in blood pressure,
Uh-huh.
but without the actual psychedelic experience.
Oh, so it's like a decoy
Yeah, exactly.
to throw participants off the scent.
Right.
But wouldn't mimicking some of those physical effects be risky?
Yeah.
I mean, what if someone has a negative reaction?
It's definitely a valid concern.
Yeah.
And researchers really have to carefully weigh those risks
Right.
when they design their trials.
Sure.
They need to choose active placebos that have a well-established safety profile
Okay.
and closely monitor participants for any adverse effects.
So it sounds like a real balancing act.
It is.
You want to create a convincing placebo effect,
Yeah,
but you also have to prioritize safety.
of course.
But even with these clever tricks,
Mhm.
you can't completely eliminate the power of expectation, can you?
Absolutely. And that's why beyond just the placebo itself,
Right.
researchers take a lot of care in measuring and accounting for those expectations.
Okay.
So they might use questionnaires
Mm-hmm.
to assess a participant's prior beliefs about psychedelics
Okay.
or how likely they think they are to receive the real drug.
So it's almost like they're trying to map out the psychology
Mm.
of the participants
Yeah.
as much as the drug's effect itself.
Yeah, you could say that the more researchers understand about a participant's mindset going into the trial, the better they can interpret the results
Right.
and control for expectation bias.
It's really fascinating.
It is.
It highlights just how much more complex these trials are
Right.
compared to just testing a typical medication.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about another big challenge,
Okay.
standardized therapy.
Right.
So if researchers want to compare results across different trials,
Mm-hmm.
they need to have some consistency
Yeah.
in the therapeutic process.
Right.
But how do you create like a manual for a psychedelic journey
Right.
that's so deeply personal and unique?
It's a tall order, for sure.
Yeah.
But researchers are working to develop therapy protocols.
That provides some structure while still allowing for flexibility and individualization.
Yeah.
So they're examining things like the role of the therapist,
Uh-huh.
the setting where the sessions take place,
Right.
and how to help people integrate the experience afterwards.
So you're saying it's not just about the drug, it's about the whole therapeutic container that's built around it.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But then there's the FDA.
Right.
And they have a rather interesting stance when it comes to regulating the therapeutic component of psychedelic treatments.
Yeah.
Remember that recent rejection of Lykos's midomethadamine application?
Yes, that was a significant development,
Yeah.
for those who might not know.
Yeah.
Midomethadamine is essentially MDMA,
Okay.
the drug often referred to as ecstasy.
Right.
And the FDA stated that they don't directly regulate the therapy itself,
Okay.
but their approval of the drug is intertwined with the therapeutic context. So they're saying they don't regulate therapy, but the therapy is kind of inseparable from the drug's effects.
Yeah.
Isn't that a bit of a contradiction?
It's a very complex situation.
Yeah.
It certainly raises some complex questions.
Like what?
For example, if the FDA doesn't regulate the therapy manual, how much variation will be allowed in how these treatments are delivered?
That's a good question.
Could this create inconsistencies in how effective the therapy is for different people?
Yeah.
And how will the FDA assess the safety and efficacy of the treatment as a whole if they're only focusing on the drug itself?
These are all important considerations that you as the listener should be aware of as you delve deeper into this field.
Absolutely.
And it highlights the need for open dialogue and collaboration between researchers, regulators, and therapists to ensure these therapies are developed and delivered responsibly. And it underscores the importance of staying informed about this evolving regulatory landscape and how it might impact access to these treatments in the future.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a fascinating situation, isn't it?
It is.
The FDA's position raises all sorts of questions about how we even define treatment in the context of psychedelic therapies. Is it just the drug? Or is it the drug plus the therapeutic experience?
Yeah, and how does this affect researchers who are trying to design clinical trials that will meet the FDA's requirements for approval?
Exactly.
I mean, do they need to prove the effectiveness of the drug and the therapy separately?
That's a key question, and it's something that researchers are actively grappling with.
Okay.
Some argue that trying to separate the drug from the therapy is artificial. And even counterproductive. They point out that it's the synergy between the two that makes these treatments so promising.
That makes sense. It's like trying to evaluate a piece of music. By studying the instruments and the sheet music separately, you're missing the magic of how they come together.
Exactly. That's why this discussion is so crucial. It's really shaping the very future of how we study and understand psychedelic therapies.
Okay, so we've got this really complex landscape of clinical trial design. We've got unique challenges like placebo effects, expectation bias, and this regulatory system that's still evolving. So where do we go from here? What's the takeaway for someone like me or for our listeners who are trying to make sense of it all?
I think the most important thing is to approach this field with both enthusiasm and healthy skepticism.
Okay.
There's a lot of excitement about the potential of these therapies. And for good reason. But it's still early days.
So don't buy into the hype.
Not blindly, no.
Okay.
But don't dismiss the potential either. Stay informed, read critically, and be aware of both the promises and the potential pitfalls of psychedelic research.
Okay.
Remember, these trials are exploring new frontiers of consciousness and healing, and that comes with both risks and rewards.
And you, the listener, remember that this isn't just about testing a drug. It's about understanding the human mind and its capacity for healing.
Absolutely.
In ways that we're only beginning to explore.
These trials are asking these really fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness, the role of experience in healing, and how we even define therapeutic outcomes.
It's really pushing the boundaries of scientific inquiry and challenging us to rethink some of our basic assumptions about how we approach mental health.
It is.
It's exciting to be witnessing this shift.
It is.
In how we think about mental health and the potential for these novel therapies to provide relief for those who have struggled with traditional treatments.
Absolutely.
But as we've discussed, the research is still ongoing. And there's a lot more to learn.
That's true.
So how can you as the listener stay informed and engaged with these developments?
That's a great question. I encourage you to seek out reliable sources of information.
Okay.
There are a number of reputable organizations and researchers who are dedicated to studying psychedelic therapies and disseminating accurate information.
And don't be afraid to ask your doctor questions. If you're interested in exploring these therapies as a treatment option, have an open conversation with your healthcare provider about the potential risks and benefits.
Exactly.
As well as the current state of research.
And I think it's important to emphasize that while there's growing evidence to support the potential benefits of psychedelic therapies, they're not a magic bullet.
Right.
These treatments require careful consideration and integration into a comprehensive mental health care plan.
That's a really important point.
It is.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement and see these therapies as like a quick fix.
Right.
But as with any treatment, it's essential to have realistic expectations.
Yes.
And understand that healing is a journey, not a destination.
Absolutely. And as we move forward with research and continue to explore the therapeutic potential of psychedelics, it's crucial to maintain a balanced perspective.
Okay.
We need to acknowledge the potential risks and challenges while also embracing the possibilities for transformative healing.
And as the listener, you have a role to play in this evolution.
Absolutely.
By staying informed, asking questions, and engaging in thoughtful dialogue, you can contribute to a more nuanced and responsible approach to psychedelic therapies.
Absolutely. The future of mental health care is a collaborative one.
Yeah.
It's about patients, researchers, clinicians, and policymakers, all working together to create a system that truly serves human needs and embraces the full spectrum of healing modalities.
Right.
And that includes exploring the potential of these groundbreaking therapies while ensuring their safe and ethical development.
You know, it's inspiring to see how far we've come
in
just shifting the conversation around psychedelics.
Right.
It wasn't that long ago that these substances were completely demonized.
Oh, yeah.
Relegated to the fringes of society.
Right. It's true. The stigma surrounding psychedelics is really deeply rooted in decades of misinformation and cultural biases.
Right.
But I think as research progresses and more people share their positive experiences with these therapies, the tide is turning.
And that shift in perception is creating space for more open and honored conversations about mental health. And the need for diverse treatment options. But let's not forget that there's still a lot of work to be done.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
In educating the public and addressing the historical baggage associated with these substances.
Absolutely. We need to approach this education with sensitivity and nuance.
Okay.
You know, acknowledging the very real risks of irresponsible use.
Right.
While also highlighting the potential therapeutic benefits when used in a safe and controlled setting.
So it's about finding that balance.
It is.
Between cautious optimism and responsible harm reduction.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's about recognizing that not everyone will have a positive experience with these therapies. Some people may have had challenging or even traumatic experiences with psychedelics in the past.
Right.
And those experiences need to be respected and validated.
Absolutely. That's a crucial point as we move forward with research and integration of psychedelic therapies into mainstream healthcare.
Right.
It's essential to prioritize trauma-informed care and create spaces where people feel safe to share their experiences, both positive and negative.
And even as the scientific community continues to make strides in understanding these therapies, there are still significant legal and political hurdles to overcome.
Oh, yeah.
You know, even if the FDA approves a psychedelic therapy, there's a patchwork of state and federal laws that could limit access and create barriers for patients.
Absolutely. Advocacy and policy reform will be essential to ensuring that these therapies are available to those who could benefit from them.
Right.
It'll require a concerted effort from researchers, clinicians, policymakers, and the public to create a legal framework that balances public safety with individual autonomy and access to care.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking questions.
Right.
The world of medicine is constantly evolving. There's always something new to learn.
That's true.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the nuances of clinical trial design for psychedelic therapies, I want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
The future of mental health care is in our hands.
It is.
By engaging in open dialogue, supporting scientific research, and advocating for evidence-based policies.
Yes.
We can create a world where all individuals have access
Absolutely.
to safe, effective, and personalized mental health care.
Right.
including the potential of these groundbreaking therapies.
I agree. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the complexities and possibilities of psychedelic therapies.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep exploring this fascinating world of science and medicine.